Hello, I'm Regid Ahmed with BBC World News. Our top stories. At least 16 people are feared dead as a hot air balloon catches fire and crashes in Texas. Russia claims that dozens of families have left the besieged city of Aleppo through a safe corridor.
Hi there, I'm Nick Marshall-McCormack. Coming up on Sport Today in 15 minutes' time. Jason had the shot of the day in the second round. The defending PGA champion tees off shortly.
Hello and welcome. Aviation officials in the US believe there are no survivors from the crash of a hot air balloon in central Texas. At least 16 people were believed to be on board the flight. The accident happened at 7:40 local time on Saturday morning near the city of Lockhart, which is around 48 kilometres south of Austin. Reports indicate that the balloon caught fire and then crashed into farmland. Investigators are on the way to the scene. It's not clear yet what caused the disaster. Eyewitness that it was there has explained what they saw.
I had just stepped out on the back porch because my dog was raising the roof. I've got a Jack Russell Chihuahua cross, and he's real sensitive to any sounds. In fact, it's a good thing he's out on the other side of the house. He'd be having a fit with all these cars around here. But he started raising the roof. I stepped out on the porch. I heard one pop before I stepped out the door. And then I heard another pop, and I'm looking around to see who's shooting because it sounded like a gun going off. And then I looked off over there, and the next thing I knew, you saw a big fireball go up. And it's just praying that whoever was there got away from the thing in time.
Well, our correspondent David Willis is across the story for us in Washington. David, what more can you tell us about the details?
Well, Regid, in the last couple of seconds, we've seen a very brief news conference at the scene wrap up there. It was held by Eric Rossoff, who's a senior advisor for the National Transportation Safety Board here in the United States. He's at the scene. He happened to be working on something different nearby and was rushed there. Other NTSB and investigators from other agencies are on their way to that scene near Austin in Texas at the moment. He said basically that this will be a difficult site to work through. What we know is that about 7:45 this morning, the local sheriff's department got a call of a fire, what was thought initially to be a car accident, actually, in this remote area of a farmland surrounded by grazing cattle and crops. When they got there, they realised that it was in fact involving not a motor vehicle but a hot air balloon. There are thought to have been 16 people at least on this hot air balloon and no survivors. I mentioned investigators there beginning their work at the moment. They're seeking to identify who was on that hot air balloon at the time, and of course the cause of the accident. Was this produced by the result, if you like, of human error? Did the pilot accidentally navigate the balloon into the path of overhead power lines? Was there some sort of mechanical problem, perhaps involving the burner, the propane, whatever? But this is thought to be the worst hot air balloon incident since 2013. There was one in Luxor in Egypt, which involves the deaths of 19 people after their hot air balloon plummeted 1,000 feet to the ground. But clearly this, a very serious incident. And within the last hour, the Texas governor, Greg Abbott, has issued a statement. He said that he extended his deepest condolences for all those who are affected by this tragedy. He went on to say, "Our thoughts and prayers are with the victims and their families. The investigation into the cause of this tragic accident will continue." So the key question, I think, Regid, is what caused this hot air balloon with at least 16 people on board to suddenly fall out of the sky?
David, as you say, 16 people on board. Is that a lot of people to be in one basket in a hot air balloon? How unusual is it to have that many people on board?
It is very unusual. In fact, I mentioned that incident in Egypt back in 2013, which involved 19 tourists there, Luxor in Egypt. But the worst case before that was back to 1989. That was in Australia when two hot air balloons actually collided, causing the deaths of 13 people. So if 16 at least have died in this incident, that makes it a very significant tragedy in the history of hot air ballooning, Bridget.
Thank you very much, David. David Willis there in covering the story for us in Washington. Well, Russia has said that 169 civilians have left besieged parts of the northern Syrian city of Aleppo after humanitarian corridors were opened. Opposition activists, however, have denied the claims. On Thursday, Russia had announced that it would allow civilians and rebel fighters to leave parts of the city. The BBC's Yogita Lamai reports. The Belgian state prosecutor has charged a man with attempting to commit terrorist murder and belonging to a terrorist organisation. The man, identified only as Noureddin H., is one of two brothers arrested during a series of overnight raids in the city of Liège. The other was released without charge. They're not thought to be linked to the March attacks in Brussels that killed more than 30 people. US officials insist it's still safe to visit Florida, despite the state becoming the first on the US mainland to confirm cases of the Zika virus transmitted by local mosquitoes. But the British government has now advised pregnant women to consider postponing any non-essential trips to the state. The infection is linked to severe birth defects. Nick Beek reports. Pope Francis will hold an evening vigil later with young people in Poland in a huge meadow just outside Krakow. Pilgrims have been filling the meadow hours ahead of the vigil. The Pope will end his 5-day visit to the country on Sunday after a final mass. Tom Burridge is there. Health experts are advising Olympic athletes competing in Rio de Janeiro's polluted waters to keep their mouths closed. The advice comes after the Rio authorities failed to fulfill their pledge to treat 80% of sewage pumped into Guanabara Bay, where sailing and long-distance swimming events are due to be held. Doctors are warning of real health risks. Well, now to China, where they've been celebrating in style the birthday of arguably the country's most famous triplets. This is, of course, Meng Meng, Shui Shui and Cuckoo, the world's only living panda triplets. To mark their second birthdays, they were treated to a panda-style birthday cake made of bamboo, carrots and apples before settling down to some entertainment. Well, let's just remind you of our top story. Aviation officials in the US believe there are no survivors from the crash of a hot air balloon in central Texas. At least 16 people were believed to be on board the flight, and the accident happened at 7:40 local time on Saturday morning near the city of Lockhart, which is around 48 kilometres south of Austin. And if you want to keep across more developments on that story, keep across our breaking Twitter feed, which is at BBC Breaking. That's it for now. See you soon.